Hi, folks. I need to get the chat link up. I think if you just look for the live chat, you can ask me questions live. I'm going to post that on the Piazza page as well. Give me a second here. I'm going to be very boring for a few minutes. Hmm. Here we go. Oh, they've changed how everything works. Okay. Okay, so now I am getting to the stage where I can actually give you guys live chat. And this looks like it follows the same format as it used to, which is great. Except that Piazza is not doing the right thing. Oh, shoot. Okay, hold on. I had a conflict in my edit. Okay, for those of you who are following along at home now on Piazza, there is a link to the live chat, which will pop things out so we can talk about it. All right. So now, hopefully I can find y'all again. And people are actually finding the live link. Wonderful. And I get to cancel that. You guys are still seeing me, even though I'm seeing an error message here. You guys are seeing stuff. Great. Okay. And we got 7 viewers. Success, finally. They've changed how YouTube Studio works. Always fun time. Okay. So now let's go to Piazza and see what the messages are there, and then we'll come back to the live chat. Okay. So, I got a few questions. Very good. Let's see here. Somebody is asking about specific code questions about maximizing player. Asking questions about board 1 player going first. And asking specific stuff. Code questions. It looks like Maxime has already answered most of this on the channel. Talking about don't use the internal functions. Okay, so I suspect that this question is getting out to. This is the first question on Piazza from Michael. One of the problems that people have often with doing this assignment is figuring out from whose perspective is the board being evaluated. So I will try to make this as plain as possible. This always has a confusion just because how the code is written. No matter how you write the code, we try to improve this every semester, and there's still confusion here. So first of all, your evaluation function always evaluates the code from your computer player's perspective. Now, that means that if I go and say, okay, I have X here and O here, and my computer player is O, and I want to say if I just call the move generator program that's provided to you, it's going to generate all the moves for the current player. That may be your computer player O, or that might be X, depending on which level you are on the tree. You want, if you're trying to do your moves, you want your computer player O, right? If you're that, and so that's your moves, and then the opponent's moves is the other player. So you got to make sure that when you're generating the moves, if that's what you're trying to do for your evaluation function, that you're doing it from the right perspective, right? And when the system is just generating moves, you got to tell it which player to do it from, and it's very easy to get things confused and do it from the wrong perspective. Now, suppose what happens if it's my moves minus opponent moves? Suppose that I get this confused and end up with opponent's moves minus my moves. Now I've actually I am trying to on some levels I am trying to maximize my score. On other levels, I'm actually now my evaluation function is doing precisely the wrong thing. It assumes that I'm trying to die as quickly as possible, and so this gets into a huge problem, especially when you have iterative deepening. Suppose I'm doing minimax and I go down to level 1. And suppose the system is doing, I think odd levels is what has a problem. So I start at level 0. I generate all the children. Suppose there's 3 children, right? And I look at the first child and I say, okay, now I need to evaluate the board from this side. And I want to do my moves minus opponent moves. Okay, but now I'm down at this level, which means that's the opponent's turn. And so if I blindly call the code, it may return my opponent's moves for my moves. So that's a problem, right? You want to make sure that you get your player's moves minus the opponent's player's moves. Now, if I go down to the level after it, so I've suppose I have a branching factor of 2 after that, I'm down here. Now, again, it is correct. I am generating my moves from the correct perspective. And so if you have successfully written your minimax code and you only test it on to level 2 or to level 4, you never test it on odd levels, you may get a surprise. It may win when you go down to a depth limit of 2, or a depth limit of 4, or a depth limit of 6. But when you try a depth limit of 5, it breaks. Now, the only way to really figure out what's going on is to have a board that you know what's going on. And so you take your 7x7 board, and you can actually fill in most of it. So you're only left with like a little 3x3. And then you put the players in places where you can manually count the number of moves and manually figure out what your tree looks like and what your evaluation functions are or should return. And then painstakingly go through that tree, know what the tree should be and exactly how it's going to be generating the children, the future moves. Generate the tree, compare it with your thing, go and print the variables out. So the computer, as the computer plays, it makes the tree, and compare it. Right, this is the only way to really figure out what's going on. Now, this is especially annoying when you start doing iterative deepening. So with iterative deepening, it's going and doing level 1, returning a result, and you're going to use that result if you run out of time. And then level 2, and you're going to store that result and use it if you run out of time. Then level 3, level 4, etc. But now you're basically trying to suicide as quickly as possible on odd levels and trying to win as much as possible on even levels, depending on your branching factor and how much processing power there is in the machine. That is going to return, are you trying to suicide or are you trying to win? Because you have this perspective problem. So that is a common mistake people make. Now, while I'm on the subject, I would suggest making Minimax work first, and then do iterative deepening. And almost everybody tries to avoid iterative deepening. Oh, I'm just going to do depth limited. Well, okay, suppose you do depth limited on your local PC, and you carefully tune your evaluation function and your node expansion, and you now have profiled it. And you say, yeah, I can always go down to level 3. Or at the beginning of the game, I can always go down to level 2. Towards the end of the game, it goes down to level 5. But then you test in your local system, and it works just fine. Then you upload it to Bonnie. But Bonnie is a different speed machine. And even worse yet, it's running multiple instances of the game as people test against it. So Bonnie has different loads. It may throw a seg fault in the middle of evaluating and stuff. And so you don't know how much time Bonnie is going to, how efficient Bonnie is going to be. And so this carefully tuned thing you did on your local machine has no relevance to Bonnie on your turn-in. And so oftentimes the only way to really succeed in sort of guaranteed way on a server where you're having variable amounts of load, because you might, load in your system and test it out and say, oh, Bonnie can do it at level 3, but it was at that minute. 5 minutes later, it might be loaded, and then it can only down to level 2. So the only way to really be sure that you're not going to time out on Bonnie is to do iterative deepening. Right? So I was just doing Minimax first, then do iterative deepening, then do alpha beta, and make sure your alpha beta is returning the same numbers you expect from your Minimax. Then start working on node ordering and getting your evaluation functions slick. This is probably the best way to learn the material and also to get past the homework, which is part of the point. All right, so let's go to the next thing. We have a Sneet that says, tried lots of options but still can't beat Noah's secret AI agent by more than 80%. Kindly suggest. Well, so I just went through a couple things. And again, iterative deepening and alpha beta pruning is your friend. I do not know if sumo isolation is going to be something where having a simple evaluation function and going deep is going to be beneficial, or having a more complex evaluation function, doing partition checking and edge cases and all that sort of stuff is going to be better. I simply do not know. However, I will tell you that, again, playing with your alpha beta, doing what you can to optimize things, and also playing with node ordering can really help. The other thing is you can actually put some heuristics in there. You can say, with node ordering. What do I prefer to do? And this is something we did in class. And I don't know if Arbor got this down for you all. But one of the things I said is, if you want to reduce the branching factor, prefer moves that block your opponent, or prefer moves that keep you close to your opponent. Because if you're close to your opponent, you both limit his branching factor and your branching factor. And that means you can search deeper, especially when you have iterative deepening and alpha beta pruning correctly implemented. Remember, alpha beta pruning is really strong. If you get good node ordering, you can go twice as deep with alpha beta pruning than you can go with Minimax if you have optimal node ordering. So I would really spend effort looking at the attention of this and using your seconds wisely. And then with the evaluation function, think about your beginning moves and your end moves. Sumo isolation, keep away from the sides, clearly, especially when your opponent has a good shot at you. Tell you the truth, I can't remember what Noah's evaluation function is. He told me, but I can't remember what it is offhand. This is the first time we're running this one, so this is you're learning. I'm learning it along with you. So I'd stick with the basics and start. And I always try to stay close to my opponent. And just start playing games, right? Go through the basics, understand, get your deepening, get your alpha beta, get your node ordering, and work on that evaluation function. Okay. I passed 1B and not 1A. If I change my code to pass 1A, do I just have to hope I get lucky again? Which one's 1A and 1B? So I guess 1A is Minimax to level 2 and 1B is Alpha Beta level 3 with my live link. Okay. So in the live link, somebody's talking about the time stuff. Would the timeout be too different? For the same move, my laptop takes 600 milliseconds versus desktop takes 800 milliseconds. Yes, that is. That's certainly possible, depending on what else is running on your system at the time and which model you got. Okay, so 1A is Alpha Beta level 4, really, and Minimax at level 2. What? Which one is? So Avik, can you tell me which one is 1A? Is that Minimax level 2? I guess can somebody remind me what's 1A and what's 1B? 1A is both. Okay. And so 1A is depth limited to a 1B is iterative deepening. Okay. Got it. So I'm really surprised you're getting 1A is Minimax plus Alpha Beta at level 2. Okay. So basically with 1A you can get into trouble, or the computer can get into trouble because it's going down to depth level, and if it's too much of a branching factor, it could time out. So that's and so basically every class we have to change the level to guarantee that we're going to be able to search to a certain depth. And then 1B. So what our person is saying is that what Haresh is saying is that he is getting past 1B and not 1A. Yeah, I'd be really surprised if that's happening. In which case, I suspect you're having a timeout issue, and either you're getting too aggressive with your iterative deepening and not leaving enough margin to return a move, and you're just timing out, and you should check for that. But in general, you should be able to, if you're passing 1B, you should be able to pass 1A, except for these edge cases. When I completed a site, but I was able to improve upon the open eval function. I found that finding ways to get the search depth deeper was more productive. Good to know. Optimizing the code to generate moves, transposition players, etc. So this is Christopher Danny Miller. He is basically saying that one of the tricks he found is to optimize the code to generate moves. In other words, he's not using our move generator. Maybe our move generator isn't very efficient. He's probably right. We're writing the code so it's understandable as opposed to efficient. So I think Christopher here is on to something. You might pay attention to this about actually optimizing the code, the code to generate moves, especially in your evaluation function. He's also doing transposition tables. I guess it's working on symmetry. Those are great things. Now, his question is, I still feel like there is something left on the table, so to speak, in terms of finding a better evaluation function than the open eval. Any suggestions for how to find a better one? So currently the evaluation function that we talk about is not a bad one. It's something that I started very early on in the course, the first time I taught it. And it's a surprisingly good evaluation function for isolation of all types. However, there's all sorts of things you can do to improve upon it, but some of it may be just to do a good opening book or a good end game. Do things that say, okay, here is I'm at this level of the game. I might change my strategy a little bit. So there's all sorts of heuristic-y things you can try and see how well it works. What can I say? This is new stuff. Not sure which eval function is going to be the best. Okay. Let me go back to my live, make sure I'm not doing it. Oh, this is Chris. Chris is live. Excellent. So Chris says 1B alpha beta at level 4 plus Noah. Okay. I have a bit board, so it's very fast. What's a bit board? I am 10x faster at generating moves. Wow. 10x faster at generating moves. That is amazing. Is somebody trying to get me on Hangouts now for this live stuff? Nope. Okay. Just my students seeing if I want dinner. It's a 64-bit integer with 1 zeros. Well, that is excellent. Huh. A bit board. Oh, I see. 64-bit integer with 1s and 0s for generating moves. And that is, oh yeah, of course that's sufficient, because with a 7x7 board, you have more than enough space to do that. And so you can really make that very efficient. Oh, that's good idea, Chris. I really like that. That could be really, really efficient. Okay. So one more question. Okay, this is from Chris as well. One more question. Okay, I have a partition, but it seems to me that given a partition is still an NP complete problem. Yes, it is. To determine how far the player can go in that partition. Notably, it is a Hamiltonian path problem. Very good. It isn't just look at the number of nodes in each partition. It's a deeper problem, as there are moves you can take even with your own partition that can cut off space. That is completely true. Once you're in a partition, it doesn't mean that you're not going to hurt yourself by cutting your own self off with a partition. Any suggestions for reducing the tractability of this problem? It appears, at least from a heuristic point of view, you should be able to often avoid this NP complete case. So there is a problem. I mean, this, and we talked about this briefly in class. Once you have a partition forming up, right, and you need to count the spaces, right? So it's one thing to count the spaces, another thing to count if you can actually use all the spaces. However, for your evaluation function, most of the time, it's probably sufficient just to count the spaces, right? And that will be okay. Then when you're trying to, once you've recognized that there is a partition and you count the spaces, then you might flip into a different mode of doing things. If you know our partition, you don't have to search anymore, per se. You just have to flood fill, right? And how do you flood fill? Well, you can just go look for neighboring stuff. Stick close to yourself, and follow a particular pattern like a normal flood fill. You know, once the partition is there, you don't have any choice. You're just being optimally filling. So that's one way to help you with this situation. Okay. Then we got all the messages about no YouTube link because I couldn't generate it. So now we're in good shape. Okay. I took the ML4T class some time back, and we were taught reinforcement learning using a Q-learner in that class. In Q-learning as well, the decision was based on rewards and real-life interactions. The one with maximum reward. Is probabilistic game playing similar to reinforcement learning? So this is from Avic. Every semester, I have somebody who takes a machine learning or a reinforcement learning approach to this game, to the system. Every time they do well, but they're never the top performers. It doesn't mean they won't be the top performers this time. And it doesn't mean that you couldn't do a genetic algorithm type thing on your evaluation functions and just spawn these things off on lots of computer power and just keep on doing little genetic changes to your evaluation function until you get some optimal thing. So there's two ways to go about it. One is to use sort of a machine learning approach to improving your evaluation function and still using the standard alpha beta style minimax trees with that evaluation function that you're learning. The other thing is just to just learn all the different board states and try to, it's a 7x7 board. You could try to just have a learner that learns what's good board states and what's bad board states and tries to get into the good board states. These are not bad ideas. It's not the point of the course or the assignment, rather. I rather have you do alpha beta, but when it comes to the competition, this sort of stuff is fine. It may work very well for you, it may not. But like I said, one thing that you might want to try is actually trying reinforcement learning approach on the evaluation function, or a genetic algorithm approach on the evaluation function. It's not a bad approach to doing things. Okay, so let me refresh my Piazza link and make sure things are cool. Nothing new there. Let me look at the live link. There we go. Oh, we're still talking about the bitboard over there. Actually, the bitboard, it may be possible to do data parallel operations using something like OpenCL. Something I should probably try. Yeah, you can get all sorts of crazy stuff. Like, what's nice about isolation is that there's all sorts of computer vision-y things you can do on it. So anybody who's actually played with computer vision before, especially for things like partitions and morphology operations, you could apply that here. Chris is saying you can transposes and mirrors very fast with a bitboard. Yes, it can be done with no loops or branching. Yeah, this is one of the reasons I like this assignment is there's lots of optimizations you can do, way far above what we give you. You tried CUDA, it was actually slower than your 2 Titan 5 Beast. Okay. Chris, I'm glad you're getting into it. This is one of my favorite assignments. I've loved this. I've used this assignment ever since I got it as a student. back in '86. There's variants of it. I mean, I can spend forever on this assignment myself just because it's so much fun. Um, uh, I'm glad you're enjoying it. Matter of fact, if you start playing around with the CUDA stuff, you might be able to do some sort of version of this. We can actually search the end game on a 7x7 for sumo isolation. I would not put it as an impossibility to actually solve 7x7 sumo. It's within the realm. I think it's barely possible. I think it's within the realm. It makes you want to do a chess engine. Yeah, chess gets you can certainly do a decent chess player with the techniques we're teaching you. Um, that's one of the beautiful things about once you have once you have an iterative deepening alpha beta code, you can apply it to lots of different games and actually do a decent job on most of them, except for when you start getting poker and that sort of stuff. All right, so let me talk a little bit about something coming up. So I'm going to be sending out a post on how to do well in OMSCS. I did this for on campus recently. How do you do well in 6601? So watch out for that. I will be coming across Canvas, which I'm still learning how to use. I'm an old T-square guy. And I'll give you some step-by-step stuff on how to do things. I'll also be sending out a stuff on plagiarism. We are pretty strict on our plagiarism thing, as you guys probably know. I'm making all sorts of agents to catch plagiarism. Please, please, please don't do it. It's a lot of work for me. Since we started working on this stuff, our amount of plagiarism has been cut in half. I'll give you guys some more explicit guidelines about what plagiarism is in this course. But basically, it is if you're looking at code, if you're looking at somebody else's code, you're plagiarizing, you're cheating. We want the level of interactions to be stuff like this. We're talking about things like bitboards and node ordering and that sort of stuff, whiteboard level interactions. When you start getting down to code, that's a no-no. And you'd be amazed how easy it is for us to catch it, especially even people who just are looking at some stuff on Wikipedia, and people just sometimes even don't think about it. They've looked at somebody else's code, and the structure sticks in their head, and they end up copying it without even realizing it. This is why at places like Google and Facebook, when you actually are making new systems, you never look at a competitor's code base, because if you do, and you end up copying some of that structure, people will find it and will sue you, and you get into the middle of a $100 million lawsuit. What's a false positive rate of plagiarism detector? So far, I think I've had one case that was clearly a false positive, and it was pretty obvious pretty quickly. In fact, I'm kind of surprised we didn't realize it as soon as it triggered. So we've had one clear false positive. We've had one where OSI said it wasn't. Well, no. We have one where OSI agreed it was plagiarism, but because of technicality, the student got off. So right now, our false positive rate is really, really very low. So our precision is very high. Our recall is hard to tell, but most people who we catch admit to it right away. Like I said, our tools are very good, and it's actually an AI. Finding code similarity, finding plagiarizers is an AI problem in many different ways. It's an AI course. I have a team of, I don't know, I guess about 8 people, working on this stuff right now in general, and they're pretty experienced at this point. So yeah, we're I might even make this a problem set at some point, show you guys how this stuff works. My goal is to make it less trouble to just do the work yourself than it is to plagiarize and get away with it. At that point, I consider it a success, and I think we're very near that point at this point in time. But anyways, there'll be more of that stuff coming out hopefully shortly. Unfortunately, I have students waiting outside my door to ambush me and deal with some research problems on campus. So we'll see how much of these posts I can get out tonight. Okay, let me get back to Piazza and refresh. If there's anything new. Nothing there. Nothing on the live channel. Okay. So let's talk about a little bit more about some of these challenge questions. Let's see here. Let's get to the challenge question mega thread should be here somewhere. Oh, Canvas, Gradescope, notes, challenge. There we go. Challenge questions. Mega thread. Wonderful. So let's take a look at. So some of these are new. Some of the ones I've actually made recently. Okay, and you're getting the stuff. Some of the stuff I'm making up in class. So it looks like Arbor has already answered the first challenge question explicitly. That was pretty easy. That's a 2x2 isolation board. And I need to go back to the mega thread. And see what the challenge question 2 is for isolation. How many terminal nodes are there in a 5x5 isolation? Yes, this is one of the interesting things here is that, trying to figure out the upper limit versus the average is hard. So the question we had here was normal Queen's isolation. And of course, the obvious thing to do is, for a 5x5 Queen's isolation, the number of nodes is 25 factorial, right? There's 25 different spaces, and so we know that's an upper limit. But then you take a look at it, you can immediately say, hey, towards the pretty soon after the beginning, you actually get a much less division of space. And so the first person has 25, second person has 24. And then it generally goes to 16 or so, and then eventually gets down around 8 or so. And so you can put an upper limit on that, but you still end up with a lot of possible game states. Well, you start looking at symmetry, and some of the initial moves, you get some very nice symmetry. You end up being only starting with like 6 boards or so instead of 25. Right? So you go from 25 to 6, and then if you look at the second move, for some of them it's 12, for some of them it's 9. So you get much more limits on this stuff. But frankly, what it kind of shows when you start doing this calculation of the upper limit on number of games you could play on a 5x5 isolation board, you quickly see that those first being moves are just really awful for the amount of branching factor you have. So that's why some students take the approach of, okay, I'm gonna have some opening moves that I'm just going to do. I'm going to return immediately with these moves, no matter what. I'm just going to assume that my player is always doing that, and then I'm going to search from there. And that's not a bad approach. Oftentimes, it's especially good in the cases where I'm giving you, say, 10 seconds to play the entire game, and you divide up your time among your moves. But that's particularly hard to do well. So we give you so many milliseconds per move, and that makes an easier problem for students to get their heads around. But oftentimes when you're doing this stuff for real and you have a certain amount of time for the entire game, having a good opening book really reduces your branching factor and makes the game a whole lot more tractable. The other thing is actually searching from the top and from the bottom at the same time to try to actually solve the game, and that's how Malcolm did it when he solved it. Okay, now let's see if I can get back to the mega thread, and I'm hoping I told Arbor to give you guys the rest of the challenge questions on gaming, because it's we're going to move on to search. We should be moving on to search, so it should be a whole lot more efforts, a whole lot more challenge questions coming out shortly. And here's one I did in class, which was challenge question 3, which is what evaluation function in Queen's isolation might help reduce branching factor. This is what I was getting to earlier, where moving close to your opponent helps really reduce branching factor tremendously. And that is often helpful in getting to be able to search the end game, especially as you're getting, further in the game. Okay, so those are the questions so far. I'm going to mark the questions I've already answered as resolved, so I can see new stuff coming up. Okay. There we go. And return. Okay, so nothing new there. Let me go back to the live link. So, Chris says, I also have a C++ version, so I have a 4-ply opening book. Wow. It is 10-ply deep on the search that I have integrated in my Python version. It does help. Yeah, no kidding. Especially with sumo isolation, I expect it does. What's nice about sumo isolation also is that, unlike Queen's isolation, you can just take out the outer rim, right? You're not going to put your piece on the outer rim anytime in the first couple moves. That's just asking for pain. And so you can really knock down your branching factor that way. And we have another person, Arsh's screencast. How could I start searching from the bottom for sumo isolation? I appreciate the insight. Okay, so I always have to think about this. So you can certainly start with having you have 3 states for each piece of the board, and it is X has been there, or O has been there, or it's empty. And then, of course, you have the exceptions of where X and O are currently at. And so you can actually just generate these boards, and then try to work backwards to see how is there any possible way to have gotten there, or how many different ways there is possible to get there. And you're going to get a lot of things where you're going to run to a dead end. But in many senses, how you got there in the end, all you got is at that end game where what your current state is. And so there's many different ways you could have gotten to that state. And so it really helps you reduce your branching factor, because I go down from the top, up from the bottom, and look at the intersections. Now, like I said, there is possible to get some stuff where there's no possible way you got into that state, or it's very improbable. But generally, it just helps with the branching factor. So generate these random boards, these end boards, because you have an end condition where X or O have been bumped off the board, or X is completely surrounded, or O is completely surrounded. Just generate those boards, and then see if it's possible to, and then just run them backwards, so that as you're running them backwards, right? So I suppose I'm doing it from O's standpoint. I get a situation where O has been bumped off the board, everything's filled in, except for X in one spot and O has been bumped out. Okay, so now I can start working backwards. Clearly O was here before X bumped it out. There's only 3 places that that X could have bumped O out. Okay, and so that's my previous move. And so I keep on backing this stuff out, and I keep a hash table of all the stuff I'm generating by backing it out, because I know this is a O lose situation, right? And I can get to the stage where O had a choice not to do that. But as I back out, I can say, was there any choice in O losing at this stage? And as I back out, if there's no point where O could have lost or could have won, I know that all those boards are bad. So I just keep them in my hash table of bad boards, right? So that when my evaluation function looks at the hash table, is this a bad board? Known bad board? If so, then return negative infinity. Is this a known good board? Return positive infinity, or whatever you're using for that. And so I can just generate boards in reverse and just keep them in the hash table until I get to this point where my player would have another choice, and then I can actually go down that other tree as well. Right? So you're basically going up and down. If you're really interested in this stuff, I believe checkers was first solved on a Cray 2 or Cray. I think it was a Cray 2 or Cray 3, searching from start and from end at the same time. I believe there's some papers on that if you want to see how that was done. Okay. I'm just about out of time here. We have something on Piazza. This is Chris. And Chris is just asking how to do the sumo push in back. So the question is, super is just like humans, the agent learns from the experience and gets better at it, right? Yes, you can actually, when you play lots of games and you find boards that are really bad, I mean, you can actually just create a huge hash table of all the good and bad board states and save them and just load it in. Now we will stop you from having things like a half-hour load time in the competition. If you guys start, trying to load in many gigabytes of board state into your system, I think that it's quite possible that Bunny will freeze. But if the TA is becoming a problem, they will limit how much load time there is. But in general, we've never seen anybody got to that point yet. People have loaded in board states in a big hash table. It's not been the case where it's gotten too bad yet. I tried a 5-ply board, but it got kicked out. I don't understand what you mean, Chris. You've tried a 5-ply board on the current system, and it kicked you out of it, right? Okay, yeah, 5-ply opening book. So I guess we've inherited code. Noah and Theo inherited code from previous semesters where they actually do have a limit on the amount of time or the amount of memory you have. You might ping Theo about that and see if it was a time thing or a space thing. We may actually have protections there. It may also that you just cause Bonnie to Horf. Our Dockers, our virtual machines, actually have restrictions on how much memory they have, and you may have run into that. Be interesting to find out. Right. Be interesting to find out if you got kicked out because so it was space. So it was actually the machine failed, the virtual machine failed. It wasn't us not stopping you. If so, if it was the machine the virtual machine that was failing, you might put a request into the TAs into a Theo to up it. It might be possible. I do not know. Bonnie is, believe it or not, Bonnie's still a relatively new thing for us. It's gotten a whole lot better. It's a whole lot more stable than it used to be. But it's still a work in progress. So on the Bonnie, yeah. Yeah. If you're interested, pester Theo about the limit. Certainly also these servers are being upgraded all the time. So it may be the restrictions that we used to have on it have gotten better. At least I would hope they would. All right. Hopefully next time I talk with y'all, it'll probably be, let's see here. It'll probably be from Japan. I may be in traveling, so I do not know if I can have my office hours at the same time next week. I'll try to and see what I can do. I'll also try to be a little bit more organized about getting things started up. No promises, like I said, because I'm on traveling. And watch out for those challenge questions. And oh, by the way, we are also trying something new with our Piazza staffing. So basically, we have TAs who are looking almost every morning and every evening, looking at trying to respond to Piazza, as opposed to the more pickup teams we had before. So there is a TA who is actually responsible for a morning shift and an evening shift. I think every day except for Friday evenings or something like that. And I believe Theo and folks are working on Sunday night, and the assignment creators. So you guys have multiple backups. For those of you for whom that this is your nth class for OMSCS, please tell me how this works. Right. We're continually trying to improve the AI course. You old timers, the ones who've actually had ML or ML for training or all these other classes, or the big data for health, all these classes, please help us out. Right? Give us feedback. Tell us how we can improve, or what you've seen from other classes we might improve upon. Especially tell us how to beat Charles Isbell in machine learning. We still have a war going on between Charles and me. I think all my scores are now above Charles's on both how much we're liked on AI course. I think we surpassed machine learning last semester by 1/100th of a point. I'll take it. I think we're about the same work level now as well. But those guys who have more experience, please help us out. But also, please help your fellow folks. There are a surprising number of people for whom this is their first class they're taking in OMSCS. So old timers, please help them out, figure out how to do things. And also, please help set their expectation levels, because a lot of times these folks are taking 3 OMSCS classes at the same time, which is just extremely painful. Try to help guide them into what's reasonable workload, and how to take the course well and get the most out of it. We really are trying to make a high quality degree here, and keep on improving the online experience. So please help us out. Please help your fellow mates out, especially the newbies. Okay. Thank you very much, folks, and I'll talk to you next week, hopefully.